Hello everyone, welcome back to another awesome New Masters Academy 10-year anniversary event. Today we have our wonderful artist and group coach Marian Littlejohn, who is going to do a fantastic printmaking demo, which I'm super excited about because I know almost nothing about printmaking and Marian knows heaps about it, which is why she's here. And we're going to learn so much today. So without further ado, Marian, welcome. Come up to the stage.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. We're just kind of working out the technicalities of sharing the screens. So I've got quite a few different things to kind of show today, different techniques. And also what I wanted to do as well is kind of give you ideas about how you can actually take your coursework into a further direction. So I've looked through my old studies, some a little bit more embarrassing than others, I have to say. And I'm going to be using some of these old studies to take into printmaking. So I'm going to look at 3 techniques today, if I've got time. If it looks like we're running over, I might have to cut one, but I'm sure I'll get back to it at some point in the future if I do that. So we're going to be looking at lino cutting. We're going to be looking at etching, and we're also going to be looking at a really lovely technique called monoprint. I've got some inspiration to show you guys as well, and I've got lots of equipment. So I absolutely know that you love equipment. So I'm sure you will definitely enjoy that bit. So I'm just going to share another screen here so I can actually have my top-down camera and show you some of these lovely pieces of equipment.
So exciting.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we've got my lovely top-down camera here, and I've got some of the equipment that I'm going to be using today. Now here that you can see, this is a lovely printing press, and it's good for things like etching. It's also great for things like printmaking as well. It's also great for squashing things if you want to squash something like your fingers. And we actually got this specially made for us by I think a company in Yorkshire, and they make these made to measure, which is a really nice thing. So this printing press does just slightly bigger than letter size, A4 size, but you can go a little bit longer as well. So really nice little thing. So the other things that I've got here is I've got a roller. This one's a nice one, an expensive one. It's more kind of like rubbery. Okay, so this is quite a good quality roller. This one here is kind of like your beginner basic roller, the ones that kind of high school kids use. You notice that this actually has a really nice little rest on it here. So that stops, if you've got ink on it, you can rest it on your table without getting ink on the table. With these ones, you rest them on the back that way. So lovely. Okay, and we'll be using that for the lino, and we'll also be using that for the monoprint as well, for when we're inking up the monoprint. And here we've got lino cutting tools. This one here is kind of like quite precious to me. I actually bought this in 1994 when I started art school, and it was one of those kind of little special purchases that you make when you think, oh yeah, it's near the top limit of my budget, but I'm going to get it. So it was definitely worth the money because I've still got it. Yeah. And it's got quite a nice little device for changing the cutting tools, and that you put in the little kind of stem and then push that through, comes out. This other one here is, again, a slightly cheaper version. And again, this is kind of like a high school student version. So this would cost not so much money. And with changing them here, you just kind of unscrew this little bit here, put in your, I wonder if it's these ones actually, put in your lino cutting tool, and then just tighten it up so that you can actually put it in there and use it. Oops. There we go. And then you would just tighten it up. The various different tools have different kinds of scoop things that you're going to kind of scoop out the lino with, so you can scoop them out in different ways. And you kind of choose a different tool as to how thick you want to cut out your lino or how thin. So you just kind of like vary the tool to be able to do the technique. This here is a really cute thing. This is an etching needle, and you use that to scratch into your plate. I'm going to be doing a sort of cheaper version of etching today, and I'm going to be using this kind of perspex stuff. So this is really good. Again, this is an affordable way of doing etching. It's quite nice. You don't need any chemicals. You just scratch into the perspex. And here I've got the lino. This is, you know, double-sided, so you can actually use both sides of your lino to do your design. You can do different designs on it. You can do it in lots of different ways, but today I'm just going to keep it really simple and show you how to kind of like do a black and white lino design. Okay, so I was thinking, what on earth have I got that I could do a lino print of? And then I thought, I know what I've got. I've got these. Okay, so almost every single person here has done Drawing Foundations 1. And I do recommend that if you have a chance, you go and have a look at the interactive version of Drawing Foundation 1, where you can get really good feedback. So when I did Drawing Foundation 1, I had a whole heap of these kind of little objects. And of course, one of the exercises there is to do things in 2 tones. So you've got your black and you've got your white. So that's absolutely perfect for, you know, a lino print, because we're looking for a really graphic, strong read. So before I start cutting, I'm going to show you some artworks. I've got my Rembrandt in the background here, trying to be a little bit classy and sophisticated. And I've got some lovely prints to show you guys. Another thing that I'm sure you guys know about me, if you've read anything on Discord, is I love a few different things. I love a bargain and I love a book. So this book here is both of those things, which is The Best of All Worlds. And this is a book that I got in a local charity shop, we call them in the UK. I guess you can put into the chat what you call these things in the States. But I got this amazing book on Degas, and it's just a sensational book. And it's got lots of images in it that you just don't normally see, and you know, when you go searching online. So Degas did some printmaking, and I'm going to show you some of his monoprints that he did. So these prints here are monoprints by Degas, and you can see that they're really rather hauntingly beautiful. So hopefully we'll get to that technique today. So that's kind of what a monoprint looks like. And a monoprint is where you ink up your kind of like plate, your background, and then what you do is you wipe away the areas with a cloth that you want to kind of show. So it's really good for, again, strong, dark and light kind of shapes. So really, really interesting. Okay. Another artist that I love the work of is Edvard Munch. And this is an exhibition that I went to see, I think it was about 12 years ago. And again, here you can see wood blocks, which is quite a similar technique to the lino cutting print. Really lovely, strong graphic feel. This is a lithograph, actually, this one. But again, with printmaking, quite often it's a really strong black and white contrast that you're going for. So that's why I've chosen the image from Drawing Foundation 1's. Yeah, you're right, it's a thrift store, that's it. So here you can see really nice, strong woodcut black and white contrast designs. Now, I've got this other book, which is on, Japanese prints. And this one's got some really superb woodcuts in it. So as you can see, I do collect a lot of books. So these ones here are woodcuts and really much more colourful this time. Really, really beautiful printmaking technique. So yeah, you can do lots of things that are getting a lot more fine work if you spend a lot more time working into your prints. So I just absolutely love all the different techniques about printmaking. And yeah, see what company makes the good brayer. Do you know, I should really know that, but I bought this I don't know who makes this one. I think I just bought it in the local art store. My local art store is really good. And it's really, you're looking for one that's just a little bit more rubbery. So if you see that kind of rubber there, it's just a little bit thicker, and it's more softer than the cheaper ones are kind of like harder and thinner. But there's quite a big price difference. So when you're buying for yourself, price difference doesn't really come into it that much, because usually you're buying one thing. Whereas when you're buying for a classroom set, even if it's only £1 or £2 more expensive, when you're multiplying that by 30, it can take you over budget. So that's why quite often you take the kind of cheaper option at school, because you're buying in multiples. But generally when I'm buying for myself, I tend to go and splash out a little bit more. So I have two kind of aspects of things going on. I really will spend a lot of money if it's on a piece of equipment that's good, but at the same time, I'm always looking for a bargain. So I kind of think that looking for a bargain allows me to splash out when I think it's a good time. Anyone got any questions?
Yes, so a follow-up question. Smile is asking, should we prefer a rubber one or metal?
So this isn't metal. This is still rubber, but it's just a kind of like tougher rubber. It's not quite as soft as this one.
Interesting.
This one is just yeah, and also it's nicer having the bigger. You see the thickness is different as well. This bigger thickness is nicer. You know, you can get really lovely big rollers. I mean, you know, if you have the chance to go to a printmaking studio, you should go along and see it. And you have these big rollers which you hold in your arms like a rolling pin, and kind of ink up and do all that. So yeah. Okay, how to cope with being addicted to secondhand books but not having enough room to store them all. Yeah. I've got a lot of bookcases. I've got about I don't know, 8 full-size bookcases in the house. So yeah, and we have a lot of books on a lot of things. So I think that makes it really hard to move house. If you've got a lot of books, it makes it really, really tough.
It's got to be worth it.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, speedball is good. I mean, I've got some speedball things. I think I might even have some speedball inks maybe over here. But yeah, and I think any kind of roller's good to get you started, and then you can start building up your kind of collection. And yeah, you can get the little small ones that are just maybe an inch, and you can do lots of interesting things with them as well. You can even do, you know, you can get your big sheets of paper and roll out and do drawings with the rollers rather than just, so you can use the rollers in lots of interesting ways. Okay, so that's a little, oh yeah, and I need to show you some Kath Colvitts, who's probably by frozen. Seem to have frozen there. Hold on.
Yeah, let's try and restart that one.
Don't know why that's frozen. Hold on.
So you can just go ahead and try to change the source in OBS back out and then back into it.
Yeah. Okay, guys, I'm just going to take a second here to try and sort out this, why it's not there now. Okay, hold on.
If that doesn't work, you can also try the old unplug and replug. Oh man, so many materials. So many books as well. That's right, Celeste, elevator music. Yeah, thanks, Alicia. I got the NMA hoodie, courtesy of Natalie and the team. I really do love this hoodie. It's actually super comfortable. It's probably the most comfortable hoodie I have. I never want to take it off. Man, I want to do some printmaking. Dum dum dum. Elevator music. What art do I make? I try to do a little bit of illustration. I also like going outside and doing plein air painting with watercolor and gouache. Hope I have some fellow watercolor fans here. It is a wonderful medium. But I may have to add printmaking to that soon.
Okay, I'm back, I think.
And we're back. Look at
Did
that.
that work?
Looks perfect,
Yeah.
Marian.
Okay. There we are. I'm a good troubleshooter.
Well done.
Yeah. When you do these kind of things, you have to get good at troubleshooting, don't you, Peter?
You sure do.
Is really necessary. So this image here is one of my favorite Kath Colvitts images, and it's a woodcut, which is very, very similar to the technique of lino cutting. Lino cutting's pretty much the same technique, but it's easier to do because lino is easier to cut through than the wood. And also lino's got no grain at all. It's completely flat. But this is a woodcut here by Kath Colvitts, which is a self-portrait, which is really rather lovely. There you go. Isn't that lovely? It's one of, yeah, I got this book fairly recently because I had a beautiful book on Kath Colvitts, and I took it into school and it vanished. So it's like one of my big regrets in life is my lost book. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this lino and I'm going to transfer this drawing onto my lino. Hopefully I've got my look at me with my product placement Sharpie pen, yeah. And I'm just going to kind of use half of the lino rather than all of the lino because yeah, I want to do it fairly quickly. So I'm just going to draw a line down the middle here, and I'm going to take my scissors and cut. That's a good idea. Yeah, and maybe I should try that. Yeah, it's the worst feeling in the world is when you have a book that you love and you lend it or you take it somewhere and then you lose it. It's really, really heartbreaking. And I think I got that one in America. So I've even looked online to try and replace it and I haven't been able to find it. So
oh no,
that book was like a good alternative. So there we go. You can use like a knife to cut the lino as well, but scissors are pretty good. So I've got my beginner's guide to drawing or drawing foundations one's post-it note, and you know it's not that good, is it? I mean, honestly, if I was reviewing this today, I might actually bounce it back. But anyway, it'll do for our purposes just now.
I think it's genius.
I like to I like to think that if I did this assignment again, I would do a far better job, you know, especially if it was Mr. Pym going to be reviewing it. I would definitely make sure I did a really good job then. So
take note, guys.
I'm going to put my little kind of like background line in, and I think I'm going to bring up my jug a little bit higher because I feel it's like a little bit of an ugly tangent there. And I'm just going to bring down here. So this is kind of a nice thing that you can do with your coursework. So when you're kind of doing stuff, you sometimes think, oh yeah, well, that's just done. And what am I going to do with it now? Am I just going to keep this big pile of sheets in the utility room? Never going to be used again. And then you think, yeah, I can actually use this. So this is actually quite a good way to get an extra bit of use out of your projects. So I'm just going to try and get these outlines out nice and quickly. There we go. Again, this is an ugly tangent. I mean, I would have sent it back for that. I'd be like, come on now. This is disgraceful. I'm going to bring it up here. But the really good thing about this assignment is you're doing the two-tonal value study. So it's perfect for Lino because Lino's a kind of binary type thing, an on and off thing. Certainly when you're doing a one color Lino print, you can do Lino with multiple colors, and maybe another day I'll do a really complicated reduction print. But today we're just kind of doing a simple two-tone lino print. And the Sharpie's pretty good for doing this, I have to say. Okay, I'm just going to pop this one coming over here. So today with all three assignments, with all three techniques, I've looked at old assignments, and I'm trying to kind of like reuse these old assignments to give them a second kind of chance at existing in a different format. So I think that's quite a nice way to approach things. Because I do have a big, massive bundle of assignments from the past. I don't know if you guys throw away your stuff, but I don't throw away any of my assignments. I keep them all. And I've got just such a big bundle of assignments.
Yeah, me
and
too.
Actually, when you look back through them, you're like, oh, that's pretty good. Okay, so I'm just kind of marking in here where I'm going to go dark. I'm not going to color it all in. I'm just kind of like, indicating it here. I want to go dark in there, but kind of leave a little bit of light. A little bit dark here.
Smile is asking, how do you decide the shades while working with reduction prints?
So what do you mean by shades?
Sure, if you could go ahead and clarify, Smile, that would be awesome.
Yeah, what do you mean by shades? You kind of see as we're going along as well how you can get a little bit of shade. Actually, I'm just going to bring the scissors that were meant to be here. I'm going to bring the scissors a little bit higher up. Okay, so that I've got them.
Smile,
and then maybe have it going on.
The color gradients.
Okay, so how you do that is you can cut your, so exactly the same way as how would you do a gradient with a pen. If you put your hatching closer together, you get it darker than if you bring it further apart. You can have lighter, so you can do gradients like that with kind of like spacing. You can also cut finer into your lino, and you can leave more grooves as well. So you'll see a little bit about kind of groove making and leaving bits of grooves. Okay, this is good enough to get cutting as an example anyway. I didn't want to do a here's one I made earlier. I just wanted to show the whole process. So I'm going to kind of get like, a reasonable blade that's going to cut out a fair bit, not too fine. So that one there's really fine, and I'll probably go to that later. But just now I'm going to go to this kind of like slightly bigger, skippy one here. Okay. Yeah. I think it's really fun actually keeping your drawings, because it's kind of nice when you look at them again and you think two things, and both of them are brilliant things to think. Either you think I'm much better than that now, which is good, or you think, oh, that's better than I thought it was. So, you can always feel positive when you look at your old drawings, no matter what.
That is so
okay,
true.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the lino that I want to be light. Okay, so this is going to be a relief print. So whatever I cut away is not going to have ink on it, and what I don't cut away will have ink on it. The other really, really important thing to remember, and it's not that important for here, but it can be very important in some circumstances, is that when you print it, it will be a mirror image. So if you ever do anything with like text on it, or something that absolutely has to be the right way around, you would have to do this back to front on this stage, or else it would be the wrong way around when you print it. And I have been the witness to those kind of disasters more than once. No matter how many times you tell students you have to reverse it, there's always someone that spends quite a lot of time doing a really beautiful print with a piece of like text on it, and only to print it out. And then okay, so I'm going to get cutting now. When you're cutting your lino, what you don't want to do is cut it like this for obvious reasons. you might think, oh, well, when would that ever happen to anyone? When I was at art school, a boy was doing a lino cut, and he nearly removed his whole thumb from doing a lino cut because he was doing this kind of like really dramatic technique, and he got rushed into hospital. So yeah, it can happen that you kind of do a thing like that. So just going to cut here. Now I always like to try and cut relatively calmly and neatly, because the cuts kind of come together to create like it's almost like your drawing marks. So the kind of cuts tell the story of how you're kind of drawing. So you don't really want your cuts to be chaotic and really haphazard. Now, do you notice how that little bit there's left? This little bit here will pick up some ink. So if you didn't want that, you could scoop in and remove it. But equally, if you wanted to leave that there to create a little bit more interest, you can leave those bits. So you can see that when I'm cutting, I'm kind of guiding my hand with the other hand, and I keep a really good hold of the lino with the other hand. And Sharpie pen is actually quite super for doing the kind of planning out your image. Other things that I use can be things like oil pastel is good to draw into the lino, and also even like yeah, what do you guys called? It's a biro pen, isn't it? That's no, not biro. What do the Americans call biro pen?
Ballpoint pen, is that right?
Ballpoint pen. Yeah, it's actually called biro because it was invented by a guy called Biro. So yeah, I think it's Laszlo Biro. I always get muddled with these really specific things, and I think, oh, I can't remember what the Americans call that.
It's like, I think that the jug is a picture.
Okay. Prints. A pretty picture from a pretty picture. So I'm not going to cut all of this today, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut, you can use protective carving gloves. Oh, that's an idea. I actually probably should, I couldn't find my gloves today, and I'm going to be showing you putting ink on this, and really you should wear gloves, but I have no idea where my gloves have gone. So hopefully it won't be the end of me.
We trust you, Marian.
So you can see, you can see how kind of like, it's almost therapeutic cutting the lino print, and it's quite a nice thing to do. It's quite relaxing. And one thing as well, like I went too deep there. I had the angle. That's horrible when you do that. Like, so you kind of don't want to have your angle really, you want to kind of keep it kind of shallow going into your lino. And again, that just kind of controls it neater. Okay. And again, you're trying to kind of not do it too quickly, because if you do it too quickly, you'll end up going deeper than you want to go, or you'll end up kind of like veering off into the wrong place for the lino cut. I hope I've inspired you to use your post-it notes to do another task.
We have a question.
Yeah.
Marquise would like to know, does directional strokes matter, like hatching on a sheet of paper?
Yeah, absolutely matters. And you'll see once I ink this up and print it out that these ridges. Okay, so you see how I'm making these kind of ridges. These ridges will pick up some of the ink. So you will have some of that pattern. So if you just kind of went all kind of random shapes, you know, and cutting here, there, and everywhere, and thinking, well, I've cut it all out now, it would look really messy. Now, if you were trying to get a really messy feel, that's good. But if you were trying to have it look really kind of organized and structured, that would be disastrous. So yeah, you kind of want to think about these cuts that you make as strokes, like you would think about the strokes when you're making a drawing. And as I say, you can leave more or less of the gap in between. Okay, so I'm probably just going to finish off the picture, and that will finish off the picture, and I will cut out the rest later on. But I'm going to show you just finishing off this little jug here. And then what I'll do is ink it up and you'll get a bit of an idea. I might just take a little bit of the background out here as well. So I'm going to switch the blade. And isn't that cool? This is such a sort of like really simple, but it's like elegant way to do it. So now I'm going to put in like this really much more fine blade here. And that's going to help me get the little kind of bit of handle done, which will be good. So pop that in, and I'm going to be cutting this little bit of the handle.
Oh.
So you can see, oh, have I frozen?
No, you're good. I just interrupted you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We do have a question from Alva. I popped in a little late. No, it hasn't been talked about yet. Is there any way to sharpen the tools?
Do you know, that's a good question. I'm sure there must be. I've never sharpened mine. Maybe this is the thing. But yeah, I think, well, I sharpen my cutting knife with like a what's it called? A sharpening stone. I've got it here somewhere. And I just put a little bit of kind of like vegetable in it. So I'm sure you could probably do the same sort of thing with a sharpening stone. At school, we tend to just buy replacement blades when the blades get dulled, because yeah, it's just going to be logistically more difficult to kind of sharpen them all. But the blades keep going for quite a long time. You don't get too much. Yeah, you get a lot of cuts out of them before you kind of have a dull blade. Okay, so that's that one cut out there. I'm going to take a bigger one to scoop out big bits here for the background. So I'm going to go for this really big scoopy one. Yeah, and that's when you cut yourself, Rose. That's right. If you have a blunt blade, costs lives. And also, too much chat at lunchtime costs lives as well. You know, if the kids are sitting doing too much talking and laughing, that's when I have actually got a first aid kit in my room, and it's, you know, it's used. They have to replenish the plasters every now and again. Oh, that's good to know, Sia. A sharpening stone with grooves. That sounds good.
Smile would like
That's
to know,
a good idea.
How do you manage if you get a wrong stroke, like it goes towards the negative space in the artwork?
You would just try and kind of live with it and kind of fix it as best as you can. Yeah, just a similar idea that if you spilled a bit of ink when you were doing like an ink drawing. So if I cut through that there, I would be like, oh, but I would just keep going, live with the mistake, and try and kind of like hide it as best as I can with the rest of the cuts. So here, what I'm trying to do is leave the black line. So I'm trying to kind of cut outside this black line, so I'm left with a kind of outline round about the jug. Yeah, I mean, it's the little kind of flaws, isn't it, that makes us perfect. That's what I always try and tell myself. If it's all just good, then I would just be bland. Okay. Exactly. It shows that it's kind of got the hand of the artist there, doesn't it? And the artist has got a wobbly hand. Okay, I'm just going to cut a little bit more of here. Probably got enough to kind of ink it up now and show you how the ink works. Okay. That's all going to be dark in there because that's shadow and it's a dark background as well. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I've got this little bit here. I think I might want to take out a little bit of light just here to make it more interesting, and maybe a little bit of light into the spout. So I'm going to go back to that other tool. And take out a little bit just here where the spout is. And again, I kind of use my other hand just to guide me through a little bit so that I have more control. And I'd never try and go quickly, because that's when that's when it's going to go really wrong. So I'm just going to lift out a little bit of white for here, just to give that. I'm going to leave a little gap there. There we go. Okay, so that's me got enough of a thing here. Now I'm going to do some rolling out of ink.
Hannah is also asking, if you cut out too much, would you be able to just use some extra ink in the final print to fix it?
Yeah, you can do like dabbing in, things like that. Yeah, you can do little kind of like what word will I use? Hacks to kind of fix it. You can kind of like dab it in if you've really kind of messed up with places. You can go in and fix things a little bit. I tend to just live with my mistakes though. Okay, so I'm going to show you the ink I'm going to use. Now this is probably a UK make. It's called Crayon and Field, and this is for relief printing, so relief inks, and this is black. And this is also oil-based but washable, so you can use kind of like normal cloths and things like that to wash up. So it's kind of the best of both worlds here. Okay, so I'm just going to put out a line of ink, and I'm just putting it on a glass picture frame, which is quite a good surface to roll ink onto. It's nice and smooth and relatively easy to clean. And I'm going to take my roller and roll it out. So when I'm rolling, roll one direction. Okay, that's underneath. And then roll in the other direction to get a nice, even layer of ink. And you want it to be a sort of reasonable thickness, but not really, really thick. And then it makes a noise. Okay, so the noise is what you're looking for. It's looking like such a nice noise. Okay. And look how beautiful that is. It's so even. It's lovely.
So satisfying.
It is.
Everybody agrees with that.
And I really, it's like one of my favorite things to do is roll out ink. If I'm not happily doing swatches, I'm rolling out ink. It's like the simple things. So here you can see now on the little block that the parts that I've cut out will be white, and the parts that I've left will be black. Okay, now for this kind of print, I actually find copier paper not too bad to use. So I've got some 120 gram copier paper that I'm going to use for this, and I'm going to show you how the press works as well. Okay, so I had so much to get organized, I forgot about picking up my copier paper. My copier paper is just over here. I'm just walking over to get it. Here we go. Now this is unbelievably my bedroom. It's like possibly the strangest bedroom that's ever been known to man. But as I'm sure all of you might be in the situation, we kind of have to make our art studios where we can find some space. So I think I've had my art studio in a lot of different spaces in my house. I've had one in my utility room. I've had one in the living room, the kitchen, and now I'm in the bedroom. So yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful shop, that one. Okay. So this, yeah, for Lino, I actually think a relatively smooth, cheap paper is actually quite good for it because you're looking for something quite flat. I actually got oil paint on my bed today. Dear, I'm meant to be a grown-up. This is ridiculous. Okay, so this kind of like really smooth paper is lovely. This is beautiful copier paper. It's 120 GSM, so it's just a little bit thicker than the normal stuff, and I find it does a really nice job. Okay, so let me see. I think I want to maybe move my printing press a little bit so you guys can see. This is when I now drop my inky roller somewhere really inconvenient. Yeah. And I'm just going to move this out of the way. Now, fortunately, I have actually, taken precautions to not get ink on everything. So I'm going to put that over here. And I'm going to move these back. And I'm going to bring the printing press just over a fraction so we can have a little chat about how it works. I'm also going to show you with the next demonstration a little bit about how we can use a ruler to get a nice decal edge on our paper as well, which is great. Okay, so I've got the handle at the side, which I think you can see in the little screen, and we've got the flat bed here. Now, this is not what a printing press should look like, but unfortunately, because students use this and don't keep it, these should be pristine, really clean and lovely, but the students, they don't really adhere to these kind of principles of printmaking. So we've got these things that are felt and they're blankets, and that's what we kind of like put over and under the print. I think I've left now. Where have I put that? Oh, here, it's over here. So I'm going to put down this here onto the blanket. I'm not going to put it too close to the edge here or here. I wanted to put it quite near the middle. Actually, I'm going to pull the press over to the other side, and I'm going to place it at the other side so I can do the big reveal on camera. Okay, so I'm putting the print down. Just angle that, yep, the print down, and I'm going to put the paper just on top. Now, what we should be doing, okay, if we were good printmakers and not messy printmakers, is not really touch our paper at all. So good printmakers would have, I'll just cut this paper. Good printmakers don't touch their paper much. A couple of reasons they don't touch the paper much. Sometimes they've got ink on their hands, but also you've got oil on your fingers, so you kind of want to avoid putting that oil onto the paper. It's a little bit like what Miles talks about in his course. Okay, so I'm just going to use these little tabs that I've made, put that down here and here, and I'm going to put the blankets on. Oh, there we are, all nice and tap. And then I'm going to roll over. Now this is where I'm thinking, we start thinking about the pressure. Okay, so we want to have pressure that's going to let us actually turn the press. We don't want to have too little pressure because then we won't make a good impression. And impressions count. Okay, so that's gone over. That felt a little bit too easy. Okay, so I think I'm going to just turn the pressure up just a little bit. Okay, so here we go. Right, there we are. And we'll just see how it's gone. Okay, I'll move it over just a little bit and peel from the corner. And there we are.
Wow.
Oops. So we can see we've got our print. It's back to front, as you can tell, and you can see that you've got these little grooves where you were doing the cutting, and you can see why it's important. I'll just turn my camera up a little bit again. You can see why it's important when you're cutting to actually cut nice and neatly, because if you just go in and cut, and I've seen a lot of students do that, if you go in and cut in a kind of like crazy haphazard way, it's going to make a really, and I think actually my horrible, where did I put it? My horrible Post-it note might actually, look really good when I finish doing this print. So, sometimes you've got these little bits of assignments, you can use them for something else. So I might, if I get time this week, continue this one and see if I can finish it off. But any questions about that? Yeah. Well, yeah. So do you want to see what it looks like if I print it again? Let's do that. Okay. I'll put another piece of my very nice copier paper. I think it's called Navigator or something. Yeah, it's called Navigator. I really recommend it. It's the best printer paper.
I've used that. It's really good. It's great to draw on as well.
It's really good. It's beautiful. It's such good paper. I use it for printing, but what I use it for doing is a lot of the time I print out worksheets that I then want to draw on top of. So I use the Navigator paper all the time for worksheets because it's really, really nice to work on. So if you're looking for a high-end copier paper, Navigator, it's really nice. Yeah, that's why I use a Sharpie pen, Harmony, because hopefully when I wash off the ink, oh yeah, there you go. That's it with the kind of faded impression, which is quite nice as well. So it's kind of like a ghost impression. And of course, you could do different things with this. You could, get like, wait, I'll show you this as well. This is good. Like, bought these in IKEA. Okay, so these are big, really big drawers that you can buy. All right, £6 or something like that, and you can just keep like all your stuff in them so well. So I recommend them. Okay, so yeah, like once you've got your print, you could actually work into it with like other material, this, and kind of draw into it further. So you can develop things with other materials, or you could use watercolor and put watercolor into the white areas of your print, so you can do other things with your printmaking as well. Another technique that some artists use is they would get something like tissue paper that's colorful, and they would stick the tissue paper down first and then print onto the colorful tissue paper, so they're kind of like creating really nice colorful backgrounds, and that's called chine collé. Okay, so Rose, you're asking what's my favorite printmaking technique, least favorite? That's a good question. They're all good. I like a simple lino print because I feel like there's a really strong, I like this kind of graphic quality that you get, they're really strong, light and dark with it. I enjoy that quite a lot. And it's kind of like a nice kind of very in your hand kind of technique. It's lovely to use. I think probably my least favorite would be silkscreen, because it's a lot of work. So silkscreen, and you need a lot of equipment for silkscreen as well. So you need to have like big screens, stuff to wash it off with a big pressure hose. So it could be quite a lot of work with silkscreens. Yeah. If I ever do more printmaking videos, there might even be a video on my Instagram, and I do this one print where I think it's a 3 or 4 color lino print, and if you're doing that color, multiple colors, you do start off with the lightest. So you would start off with the lightest tone that you're going to use, and then build up to the darkest tone, and that's the way that you would get the kind of the right shades for everything. Yeah.
So another question, Hannah is asking, any tips for not carving your prints backwards since the impression comes out inverted? I remember being so confused when carving out text when I did a lino print.
Well, I mean, you could do something like a bit techie, and that you could flip the image on your phone that you're working from, and just kind of work from that. Or you could take it into a computer program, flip it over so it's back to front, and then print it out and work it from that. or look at it in a mirror and do it that way. So yeah, that's kind of what I would suggest doing. If you're somewhere where there's a photocopy machine, you could do your design and then photocopy your design and then work. You know how in photocopiers you can often flip things over and then work from the flipped design. So try and find a way to flip it over before you print. If you make a mistake and you print it and you get things back to front, do the opposite. Scan it in and put it into Photoshop, flip it in Photoshop, and then you at least have a digital version that's the right way around.
That's so genius.
You can tell I've done that. Yeah, you could flip it with tracing paper as well. You could do a kind of, mirror image with the tracing paper. That'd be quite a good way to do it as well, Rose. Yeah, or you could just roll with it and then people were like, oh, that's so clever. I mean, the text is there, but it's not there. It's like so sophisticated. So that's Lino. Okay, any more questions before I end this little bit of the section? Because I'm going to take a quick break after this section and we're going to look at the etching next. But any questions about the Lino just now?
So we have one more question. Maya is asking, have you ever tried doing multiple colors with Lino Cut? Is that possible to realign it well enough to do it?
Yeah, it's really easy to realign it. There's a couple of techniques that you use. And what you can do is you get a couple of bits of cardboard and you put like little, so you'd do it on some surface like that, and you would cut card that has got a thickness to here and put another bit of card to here. So every time you put your block down, you would register it to the same cardboard marks. I'll show you what it would kind of look like. I've got cardboard. I've got everything in this place, guys. Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, so if we had a couple of bits of cardboard, I've been doing the summer school classes for the young students on New Masters Academy, and I'm always dashing off and getting another thing from my room, and I think they think I've got an infinite amount of things.
Marian has all the materials
in one room. Okay, so yeah, what you would do is this is where you would put your registration bars. So you would put one there and you would put that there. So then every time you go to print, so this would be stuck down onto your printing bed, and every time you print, you would put this back into the same position, and that would register it into exactly the same spot for you. So yeah, that's how you do that. But also, having said that, the Lino is quite denty itself. So you can actually, do you see how that's got a kind of bit of a dent here? You can actually, even if you haven't done that, you can actually try lining it up. So what I usually do if I've done that is I would line it up like this and try and get it to be, yeah, that's quite good. Oops. And then I would flip it over like that if I hadn't put the registration marks. Yeah, you probably good with a pin it into place. So yeah, that's how you would do that. And you can see this actually, you can still see the Sharpie underneath quite well. So I'll wash this off and we will see if we still have our Sharpie. Okay, now I am coming back in a couple of minutes. I'll probably take, what do you think, Peter, maybe 3 minutes?
Sure,
yeah. I'm just going to kind of clear my space, so I've got a tidy space for the next part, and I'm going to show you a little bit about etching. Okay, so I'm saying this as if I'm going to be leaving straight away, but now I've got to find my mouse and navigate to the right screen. This is an unusual mouse mat. Got to be careful not to squash your mouse when you're doing such a printing demonstration. Okay, put on that screen.
Jam, also you're asking how long the demo is today. I think we're aiming for about 2 hours. Is that right? I think it's 2 hours today. So we're halfway through.
Yeah, 2 hours.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Marian. This is so exciting. See you guys soon.
Okay, guys, so I'm back with just a quick change of setup. So I'm using a different piece of homework now. So, I can't remember which class this is from. Is it like Portrait with Elia? The skull, I think it might be.
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, which is another fantastic class. So when I was browsing through my previous drawings, I saw this one. I thought, oh, that's better than I remember. So I thought I'm going to use this one for the demonstration. And what we're going to be doing is making an etching, which is intaglio printing. So the last stuff was a relief. This one's a bit tougher. It's intaglio, which means kind of inside the inside, because we're carving inside. And this time we're thinking in the opposite principles. So this time the marks that we are making are going to be dark, are going to be the color of our ink. And what we don't carve is going to be white or lighter. Okay, so I'm using the etching needle, which, we buy these, but I'm pretty sure you could probably make them quite easily. If you just kind of got like a nail and put it into some kind of wooden thing. So yeah, these are called etching needles. Like, see, this is why I can't have nice nails. Just get all grubby. Okay, so this stuff here comes on a roll. It's quite inexpensive. So you get like a big roll of it. And we get this because it's reasonably affordable to do lots of etchings onto it. And again, you can just cut that with scissors. But because it's on a roll, the disadvantage of it is it's like got a real kind of like, it's curved. So I'm using my printmaking inks to anchor down my piece of plastic, so it doesn't just keep doing that to me all the time. But before we get going, I'm going to tell you that I'm using a slightly different kind of ink just now. I'm going to be using the intaglio ink. I think I've got the intaglio ink. Let me see. Oh, I just got. Maybe they're. Here they are. Yeah. So these ones here are the etching inks, and again, they're the. Yeah, look, see, handcrafted in Great Britain by Cranfield. So this is like a small company making these things, and yeah, we've got that and the little tube there. So yeah, I guess these might be pretty tricky to get if you're not in the United Kingdom, but if you're in the UK, these will be relatively good to get. So we'll be using this etching ink instead of the relief ink. But the relief ink tins are heavier and better for anchoring down the plastic. So this is really sort of similar to drawing with pen and ink. And when it's printed out, it'll look like pen and ink. So it's quite a similar sort of idea. So with making these marks, we're going to be scratching in. And I don't know if, maybe I'll come down a little bit here with the camera. And I'm just hatching in a similar way to the way that I would if I was drawing with a pen. Excuse me, I'm getting a bit of a dry throat here. I'm just going to mute while I can cough. I thought I'd be polite and mute while I was coughing.
That's very polite, Marian. Can I just say how beautiful that skull drawing is?
Yeah, well, I was really shocked by how, because I hadn't looked at it since I'd drawn it, and I'd forgotten that I'd drawn it, and I found it, and I was like, oh, that's quite good. I don't remember drawing that. So maybe I didn't. Maybe it's someone else's drawing. Maybe it's my daughter's. It was one of those drawings too that, you know how you start some drawings sometimes and you just get really into it and you just keep going and going with it and you just lose yourself in the drawing. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this again is a really nice way to take a drawing that you love, that you think, oh, that's a really beautiful drawing. I'd like to kind of like make multiples of them and sell them to people and make a fortune. So it's a really nice way of kind of like monetizing your work as well. And obviously that's why, you know, printmaking became really popular. You know, like Albrecht Dürer was really quite the businessman, and you know, he wanted to make as much money as he could, so would do multiple editions. Rembrandt as well, doing multiple editions, because if you're doing the multiple editions, you can make many things and sell them to people.
Liberty would like to know if this method is also called dry point.
Yes. Yeah, it is. And traditional etching is different. So traditional etching, which requires a lot more in terms of technical materials, you would use a copper plate, and on top of the copper plate you put a kind of gummy type material, and then you cut through the soft gummy material, but then you put your plate into an acid bath, and the acid eats away the stuff that you've cut, and then you wash it, and then you print it. So this gives you kind of like a nice approximation of etching, but without the need for, you know, complex acid baths and things like that. So I wonder if, like, so when I'm doing this, sometimes like I'll slip in like a little bit of other color paper to see what I've cut. Let me see if this works. So can I just slide underneath?
Harmony is also asking, are the scratch marks really visible to you, or are they quite subtle?
Yeah, so they're quite subtle. Let's just see if you guys can see them. Yeah, so they're quite subtle. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to go for too long on this, and I'm not going to get to the finished thing, but I'm just going to go for another little bit. So we've got a little bit more. The other thing that you do when you print make something like this is you take many impressions. Now, as we all know, Peter, a lot of people think that the first impression is the most important impression. But in printmaking, you get a chance to do a better impression once you've done your first impression. So you can pull multiple prints as you develop your piece. And what you would do is you would print it, and then you would look at it, evaluate it, and decide whether you needed to do some more cutting into it. So it's kind of got a really nice iterative process and built into the actual technique. And that's another way to make some extra money if you guys are looking to. And sometimes, like, they're called artist proofs. So before you get to the kind of final version of your print, you have these kind of versions called proofs, which are the prints that you make on the way to getting to your final print. And sometimes the artist proofs are seen as being more valuable than the actual finished print edition because they're one-offs, or just one or two of them. So some people collect the artist proofs as well. Okay. And I'm just going to carve into here. So this is not going to look like much when I print it up, but you'll get the idea of what I'm doing. Now, I forgot to bring really horrible rags, so you're probably going to be appalled at me using this really lovely yellow fabric. Look how beautiful it is. So nice. Sorry, yellow fabric. You were just so pretty. Anyway, I'm going to get the yellow fabric, and I'm going to take my etching ink, and I'm going to put a little bit of the etching ink on the fabric. This is really where I should have gloves on.
So we've had a couple of students asking if you could remind us what surface you're etching on.
So it's like it's a thick plastic, but not too thick a plastic. Now you can actually carve really nicely onto acrylic plastic. This is a plastic sold by, I can't remember, I think it might be Sea White, and it's plastic designed to do the etching. So it's quite thick, but not too thick. So what I'm doing here is I'm pushing the ink into the little grooves that I've cut. And then, yeah, you can kind of see where I've put my marks, and then I get a piece of the cleaner ink, sorry, the cleaner cloth, and wipe it out. So you can see now where I've been putting those hatch marks. Now, when you put your ink onto your plastic or whatever it is, you can actually make decisions about leaving some extra bits of ink on there to kind of create tone. So when you wipe it down, you're kind of making a decision about whether to wipe all of the ink off or whether you're wanting to leave a little bit of the ink on. Okay, so that's how you ink it up. But now I need to talk to you a little bit about paper, and this is where I'm being a really bad printmaker. Really terrible printmaker. So I apologize. The gods of printmaking will be looking down on me and shaking their heads in anger and sorrow. Okay.
Oh, and we had a question from Catherine. Is the intaglio, am I pronouncing that correctly, ink different from the relief ink? Is it still oil-based?
Yeah, it's the oil-based that's washable. I'm not really sure what the differences are. And actually, I can guarantee you 100% that when we've been doing printmaking, we've definitely used the wrong ink, probably often, and it still kind of works. But there must be some kind of subtle difference. Okay, so I'm using a basic paper here. So Winsor Newton, a fairly heavyweight paper, 220 GSM, and it's a cartridge paper. So I'm not really sure if in the USA you have cartridge paper, but it's kind of an interesting, weird name. I always kind of like wondered why it's called cartridge paper, and it's called cartridge paper because it's like the kind of paper that you used to wrap cartridges for guns in. So it's called cartridge paper because it's that kind of paper. So it's a strange name. So what I'm going to do is, this paper is too big, so I'm going to have to cut it, and I'm going to use my metal ruler. And this is a nice way of cutting paper. So I'm just going to put the ruler down the kind of middle of the paper, and let's move this out of the way. I'm just going to kind of like lift, and this is terrible. I'm going to get a thumb mark here. And I'm going to lift, and I'm just going to pull the paper. And what that does is it gives you this nice deckled edge to your paper and just gives a sort of nicer kind of sweet finish to your paper. Now that's not as finished with what we have to do with our paper. We have to dampen the paper because we need our paper to be slightly wet so that when the ink, when we put it through the press, the ink gets pushed into the paper. So I'm going to get my bath of water and I'm going to get my paper and I'm going to float my paper into the water and get it wet. So I'm just going to let all the water kind of drain off. It's a bit like developing film in the old-fashioned way. Okay, so I'm just going to let that drip. I'm going to move my big bath of water precariously back over towards this part of the room. Okay, and I'm going to get a couple of sheets of paper to then blot out the water. So I'm going to put this here, and you can see where I've been really a dreadful printmaker with my horrible marks there. So shameful. I apologize.
While we're organizing that, guys, I just want to plug quickly that we have a feedback form that we would love you to fill out if you can. And if you fill that feedback form out, you can actually go on the draw to win a giveaway for some free group coaching.
Okay, so I'm just using like I think we call them J-cloths. Like these cheap kind of like woven acrylic cloths that you can buy in the packs. These are quite good for blotting the paper. So I'm just blotting the paper with that. And I've got my etching over here. And I'm going to place it on the press with the paper over the top. Okay, so I'm just going to roll over here. And I'm going to place the etching down here and put the paper, which is now not too damp, on top. Now, normally I would have wanted to flatten the etching stuff a little bit more, but I didn't do that in time. So I'm just going to put it down like that, and I'm going to have to tighten up the screws here because obviously the last thing that we printed was the Lino, which is like super chunky, whereas the plastic is really just like, I don't know, like 0.5 millimeter thick. So putting that over to the other side, and let's see if that was enough pressure. I mean, I feel as if there's been enough pressure tonight, you know, with all the technical problems that we've had. Okay, so I'm just going to peel it back and we'll see. Okay, so that's come out a little bit. So a couple of things that we maybe want to investigate. Did we put enough ink in? Maybe needed a bit more ink. And also maybe we needed to put the pressure a little bit more on. So once you've done your first print, you troubleshoot basically, and you think, is this working? Is it not working? So your kind of first impression that you make is usually the worst impression that you're going to make. But you still get the job because you will keep going until you make a really good impression. And then once you've got the impression exactly how you want it, you will at that point pull lots and lots and lots of prints. So let's see if we can get a better impression. I'm going to just get the ink again, and I'm going to ink up this plastic one more time and see if we can actually get a better pull on the next one. If I can find where I put my ink. Normally you would be really organized and have a really organized workspace. This is a little bit cobbled together workspace. Okay, so I've got the ink, and I'm just going to again take a little bit of cloth. Has anyone got any questions, Peter, that I've been ignoring, or they're sitting heartbroken?
Let me see. I see we do have a question from earlier. Ken was asking, would you need a rolling press to be able to pull a print out of this?
Depends what kind. Oh, yeah. So Lino, you can get away with just having like 2 or 3 of those kind of brayers or rollers. You can even use the back of a spoon to do a really effective Lino print, which is actually fun to do as well. I quite like using the back of a spoon to do a Lino print. Now, I haven't tried this yet, and I'm going to try it at some point soon. But if you've got a pasta machine, you know, like the ones that you make lasagna. So I know that some people have done these kind of like with the plastic, they've been able to do good etchings using pasta presses. So I'm not sure if I do it, and because I've got a pasta press somewhere and it works, I will let you know, because that's like a really nice, yeah, cheap way of doing it. This press is
Really?
Yeah.
Sounds like utter chaos. I want to see that happen.
It might be. And then you probably would maybe want to wash it before you go into the pasta, unless you wanted to say it's like that sort of squid ink pasta and just pass it off as that. But
Yeah.
that
I always eat my lasagna sheets.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't tried it. I've seen people doing it. And I think, yeah, I'd quite like to give that a go. So I don't know. It might be one of these things that doesn't work so well as you kind of think it would. But this press that we've got here, the one, and you know, when we kind of like, we wanted a printing press and we didn't have any money for the department, and we just looked at what funding we could get to buy a printing press. And I think that's always a really good thing to bear in mind as an artist, that there are funding bodies and there are different places that you can go to look for money for different things. So if you've got a good idea for a project and you think it could be, you know, interesting or valuable or something that you could do in the community, it's always worth looking to see if you can apply for a grant to try and get it funded. So we managed to get some funding for the printing press. And, you know, that was the day before, you know, ChatGPT. We actually had to write the bid ourselves without even putting it through ChatGPT. So, you know, we had to do a good job of that. And it cost, which I think is kind of like a reasonable price, it cost £600. So I think, you know, it's expensive if you're kind of like buying it just for yourself, but if you're buying it to use between multiple people, it's not a bad price to pay. Okay, so hopefully I've pushed the ink in a little bit more here. And just give it a little bit of a rub, maybe just get that bit a bit cleaner. Okay, and I'm just going to, I'll just do my paper over this side, so I'm not in the vulnerability of soaking my entire bed with a basin of water. And I'm just going to, I think I had the other half. Here's the other half. So, oh, it's the same bit of paper. Here it is. Okay. So I'm just going to wet this bit of paper. Do we have any questions, Peter?
So no questions right now.
Cool.
So interesting seeing it all come together.
Yeah. And I'm just going to take this bit of paper, get the little cloth, dampen it off, and I think I'm going to have to put the pressure on a little bit more so that we can actually pull one of our prints. But yeah, I mean, this is such a nice little press to have, and I love the fact as well it's handmade, and it's you know, this guy's business, and he makes these, you know, like to measure, as it were, for when you want them. And it's lovely to support people that kind of have a passion for their own business as well. Okay. And actually, I think I'm being quite, I'm being quite British and local here with my inks and my printing press here. It's like buy local, print local. Yeah, we've got you know, kind of bespoke things, which is nice. And you've got to be really careful with things like printing presses, because quite often, like, you know, on Facebook Marketplace, there can be these places that you know, so people put up things like printing presses for sale quite often. And there seems to be a spate going around just now of people putting up photographs of really lovely printing presses, putting them in at a sort of really cheap price, but then there's no printing press. So you've got to be careful if you try and buy something like this online, because there's a lot of people looking to kind of take advantage of people's kind of good nature.
Wow, the great printing press scam.
Terrible. Yeah, it is. See, this is hard here. I'm just going to put it on like this. So we would really want that to be flatter. So I guess if I was doing this properly, what I would probably do is cut in advance my sheets of plastic, and I would maybe put them underneath a book, a series of books. I've also got another printing press that's it's like a book press. So it's one that you just turn the handle at the top. That would be ideal. That one's even heavier than this one though. And this printing press is so heavy, I had to ask my mighty and strong son to carry it for me because it's about 40 kilos. So he was really pleased that he was able to be mighty and strong for me today. So that was super. I did that kind of thing that teachers do. I'm like, I need a big strong boy to go and get my printing press from the car. And he was up like a shot saying, yeah, I'll get that for you. Okay, so I'm just tightening up these screws here. We've got to get the pressure on. Yeah, I mean, I think you can pull a lot, you know. So you're asking, do they degrade? I think they do, but you can actually get like a lot of impressions from them before that happens. So Lino seems to go like, you know, forever almost. You know, you can keep on pulling Linos. It doesn't change terribly much. The etchings, it probably would get harder and harder to kind of, you know, keep on. Maybe it would be difficult to kind of keep going with them. Certainly there's a finite, but you can pull like 100 quite easily. You know, you can get a lot of prints from these. And one of the really nice things we did, because I did printmaking at art school, and one of the best things that we did when I did printmaking at art school is every single person in the class made a print and they made an edition. I think we made an edition of however many people were in the class. I think it was about 18 or something along those lines. So each of us made a print, and we made enough for everybody in the class. And then we were able to kind of like get a box of prints that every single person had contributed to. And we then made a box that they went in, and I still got mine. And it's like a real thing to treasure.
Ooh.
Could I use a hairdryer to flatten it? I don't have a hairdryer. I need to go get a hairdryer. I just, minimal beauty input here for me. It's like have my shower and then just, walk away. Occasionally do a little bit of zhooshing, if I'm feeling like being fancy.
Catherine's asking, Marian, how do you keep your hair looking so organized? So jealous.
It's because I don't use a hairdryer. So if you want to come to my other session on beauty tips and hair drying, that'll be on, I don't know, sometime in the future.
Maybe you can enlighten us more during the fashion.
We could talk about that. Yeah, Peter at prom. We can share some of our top fashion tips, can't we? At prom?
Marian can share the fashion tips. I will listen attentively.
Okay, so I'm hoping that I've made a better impression this time. We'll see. Okay, so yeah, that's much better. That's much darker. You can see the lines better there and the hatchings. So obviously, if you were doing this properly, you would really take a lot of great care and attention over those hatch marks. But you can see that I rubbed that bit away completely, but I left those bits there not rubbed. So you can kind of create these halftones as well. So you can do a little bit of, like if you wanted to pick out highlights, you could do it with the cloth, which would be quite nice. So that's how that works. Okay, so Peter, we've got one last technique to get through tonight, which is great, isn't it? I've managed to get all 3 in.
So good, Marian.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take another maybe 2 or 3 minute break while I unhave a nervous breakdown and tidy up my workspace again. And the next piece that we're going to be looking at is Monoprint, which is it's a weird one to explain to people because it's a print that you make one print of, and I've never really managed to explain the why you would do that, but they just look beautiful. So I kind of think that's enough of a reason. Maybe you guys can Google and find out a better reason than that while we're having the break. But my reason for doing it is they just look really good.
We do have one question coming through just before we go on break.
Yeah, go for it, Peter, while I'm looking for my mouse.
Is asking, what is the best way to clean the plastic after you're done printing? If you forget to clean it, does that damage the etching?
I don't know. Usually, yeah. So water for these kinds of inks, it's water. And the reason I have these inks is where we're kind of using them usually in school, and you don't really want to have any chemicals that are difficult or anything like that. So these particular kind of inks, and I would recommend going for these kind of inks. They're safe wash, so you can just use water to wash them. So yeah, you would just wash it with water. And I guess what I would recommend is if you kind of let it dry because, I don't know, time flew away from you and you had to do something really quickly after you did your prints, you didn't have time to do the cleanup. I'd just, how those stiff brushes that you kind of wash dishes with, I would just give it a bit of a scrub with the kind of stiff brush. Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to pause my microphone.
Okay, and Marian is on mute now, so we will see you all in just a moment. Another quick break. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, I'm back again. You can see me shuffling around there. Sorry about that. It's quite tricky with, yeah, I've got to be careful where I put my mouse in this setup because I could end up with a very inky mouse, which yeah, wouldn't be good. Long term would not be good for my desktop.
Guessing the mouse
So what
is
I'm going
not
to
an
do,
inking tool.
and maybe it could be, especially you don't remember, Peter, in the past those mice that had the little ball
Oh
in
yeah.
it. You know, maybe that could be a good drawing too. You know, fill up that with ink, and you could
Experimental
be, you
inking.
know, it's good.
Maybe in a different class.
Experimental. Yeah. So what I'm going to do just now is I'm going to be using another piece of coursework that I did to be the inspiration. And this time the piece of coursework is an ink drawing that I did in Miles' class that was quite, that's Miles Yoshida's Introduction to Inking. And here's just kind of like loose inky washes. So I'm going to try and create something like this, but in a monoprint. Okay.
So beautiful.
So I'm going to get my ink that I put out earlier, and I'm just going to use the relief ink again. So I'm just going to put out a little bit more ink. Now, if this was smaller, I could actually use this to do the monoprint on, and I could just draw into this, but it's too big to go through the press. So I'm just going to ink up. I've got a small, this is again a picture frame, but it's like a cheap Perspex picture frame. And actually you could etch into this as well in the similar way to the other etching. So I'm going to get the ink onto this and then draw into it. So I'm going to find my roller again. And I might just put down some fresh ink here at the top. So I'm going to use the relief ink. And again, I'm just going to spread the relief ink along the top.
Yeah, and we had a question about
and then we'll have that. Yeah.
Sia was asking, when you get your final impression, how many prints can you get in one inking session, or do you have to keep adding ink for each print?
I think, you know, if you're talking about doing the etching, I would always re-ink every single time. Printmaking is time consuming because you have like a big setup and also a big tidy up. So it's like, yeah, it's just quite a lot of work. But when you get into doing printmaking, you kind of enjoy the whole process. It's kind of, you know, you'd spend maybe, you know, 5 or 6 hours kind of doing your prints and getting them done. And it's really nice. And then you're trying to get consistency as well across your prints. So when you're doing an edition, you're meant to get them quite, you know, the same every time. Although some artists like to do editions that are more varied. And again, they would sell them as more kind of like one-off type prints. And that's the kind of quite interesting thing about printmaking is you can do it in, you know, different strategies for how you're doing your different kind of, whether you want them to be exactly the same or whether you want them to be a bit unique. Okay.
And who doesn't want to hear that amazing sound again?
I know, here we go. It's the shoo, shoo, shoo. It's like the best sound. And again, I always go one direction, then the other direction to get a really nice flat surface. And these inks are actually lovely. These washable inks are really nice because there's no sort of horrible smell with them. They're really non-toxic. Lovely to use. Okay, so I'm just gonna put that to one side. Over here. And I'm just going to ink up this piece of Perspex. And I'm just going to leave the ink not quite at the edge so we get a kind of nice little frame round about it. Okay, so that's lovely and flat. Isn't that nice? Look how nice that is. It's beautiful. Okay, so I've got my little piece of homework that I'm kind of referring to as my kind of guide here. So I'm just going to basically draw into the plate here with my cloth. So I'm kind of removing bits of ink. And again, this can be, it's quite painterly, it's quite like a kind of brush stroke that you're doing here. And you could use other things to kind of remove the ink. So here I'm kind of using, again, this is, I should have worn gloves. I couldn't find the gloves, so I apologize. This is why I always feel a bit nervous sometimes as well when I'm doing a demonstration on camera, because I can't always guarantee clean nails. So I'm using like a nail, pushing the cloth here a little bit, and you just kind of take away parts and leave parts here. So, I mean, this would be quite a nice technique to do gestural drawing in, or something that's got a really nice flow. And actually, George Pratt does amazing monoprints. I don't know if anybody follows George Pratt on Facebook, but he often posts the most amazing monoprints. So, and a lot of those are really figurative and gestural. So it's kind of a nice technique for doing really lovely, soft, painterly effects. And again, you did that. Well, yeah, someone asked me, would you take, I think you could probably pull 2 or 3 prints with this amount of ink that would be fairly similar. And then you could work into it with different things. And, you could use different ways of getting marks in here. You could do things like get feathers and take impressions of feathers, or get leaves. And, you could actually use some natural textures and forms that create impressions as well. So you can be quite experimental. So I'll just link into Drawing Foundations 1. So in Drawing Foundations 1, week 6, there's that lovely lesson where you have to do textures, and in some ways, you're meant to do things like rubbings and finding textures around about you and using those. So again, in a technique like this, you could use textures from the natural world to kind of give you some interest in your piece of work. And again, I'm moving the cloth, this lovely yellow cloth. Such a beautiful piece of fabric. What you should do is use things you don't want anymore for this. You should use like, T-shirts that you don't want to wear, stuff like that.
Its sacrifice is not in vain, Marian.
Yeah. It's just because it's such a beautiful color, isn't it? You think, I feel really guilty about using this lovely piece of cloth. Okay, so I'm just kind of going to pot it about here, removing. It had a good life. It served a purpose. Just removing little bits from here. And I think with this as well, you could work into it, like if you wanted to add more black in, you could get a brush and you could paint in bits with your brush as well. So, you can both wipe away, but also add in. So it's quite a nice process to be using. And again, you would just kind of keep going until you got it to the stage that you would want it to have. And you're just kind of using these homeworks to inspire other pieces of work that you're doing as well. And I guess other things you could do is you could get like a little bit of a stick and draw into it with a stick and make it more like pencil marks. So just depending on what tool you wanted to use to kind of like draw into the monoprint, you would create different kinds of mark making and different kinds of thickness of line as well. So you can see I can get these kind of nice thin, or I can get ones that are more kind of gestural and painterly. And yeah, so I'm just going to print this like this. It's not going to look finished at all. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wipe around the edges here so I don't get all my fingerprints around the edge. And I won't need to dampen the paper this time because there's so much ink on the surface. But I will have to keep the pressure quite a bit. I'm just going to take another little bit out of here. But I would probably spend a lot longer than this drawing this if I was going to draw it. But there'll be some fun marks here as well. And this could be, I think this would really work well for those kind of more gestural pieces of drawing that you want to do. And this kind of printmaking, I mean, I could try it without the press, couldn't I? I could try it just with a roller and see what we get, because then that can show you what you could get at home. So we'll do that. We'll try this just with the roller, and we'll see how it comes out.
And while we're doing this, I just want to say how lucky we all are, because Marian actually has coaching here at New Masters Academy as well. So you guys can sign up for that, and you really should, because she is awesome.
I promise I don't make bad jokes all the way through coaching. It's just a little bit.
We all need a few
Okay, so again, yeah, it's how we get by, isn't it? So I've just used, again, that lovely Navigator printer paper, the 120 GSM, and I'm just kind of like smoothing the back here, like this. It's nice, isn't it? It makes the paper feel really cared for. Okay, and that just sticks it to the print so that when I go over it with the roller, will be good. Okay, I'm just retrieving a roller. Okay, and then I'm going to go. Now, what I tend to do is I tend to kind of like do this, like put like all the way onto the roller. So that's the other thing about printmaking. Printmaking is a good workout. So if you're looking to kind of get fit and healthy, but also develop as an artist, taking up printmaking can, you know, pay dividends. Okay, so we'll see. This is somebody who doesn't have the big fancy printing press. We'll see how it goes. So this is the kind of, this is the nice when you do it this way. You do get a little bit more of a reveal moment. So I'm just gonna peel it back, and okay. So we can see that we've got some really nice marks there. If you spent a bit longer working into it, you would get, you know, some really lovely textures. You can decide to paint back into it. So when you've got your monoprint like that, you could then work back into this. We could see what it's like if we take another pull.
That's amazing.
So, I mean, it's a fun thing to do. And again, you know, you can be, the other thing that you could do as well is that you can, because that's transparent, you can set it on top of the drawing. And also with the etching technique, I think I brought up, I have no chance of finding it. It's too many things now. But I did bring up like some of Durer's hands that I'd printed out. So if you were wanting to do a master copy, the acetate etching technique would be quite good to do a master copy. You could just set it on top of a print, you know, a print of the, what you're wanting to kind of like copy, and then just do your master study just by copying the lines. And then you would learn a lot about the artist just by doing all exactly the same lines. So let's see how we go. It might be completely ghostly. And these are called ghost prints. So I'm going to have to lean even more heavily now. It's nice though, because if you've had a stressful day and you kind of think, oh, you can kind of like release a bit of that tension with your printmaking. might be nothing.
This really is fitness. This really is fitness with Coach Marian today.
It's much more energetic than some art forms, isn't it? It's definitely. And even just rolling the press takes a bit of energy as well. But the biggest amount of energy is if you're doing a really big print. So I used to do these really big lithography prints, and the roller would be like a big rolling pin one. That would be like that, and you'd have to like do this and really, really go for it. So yeah, it was good. Right, so we see what the ghost print looks like. So we've got a bit of a ghost print here. So this is where I would like maybe work into it, you know, with different media, different techniques, things like that to try and develop the drawing further. So yeah, with the printmaking technique, I kind of see the print as a sort of really nice way to get lots of iterations, try out different things, and kind of explore your image and developing it in a way that's a little bit different to just developing a drawing, because you get these really nice snapshots as well of what your piece of work looked like. So for instance, going back to the little one from the beginning, you know, if I continued to do this Lino and finish it, I would have, if I took impressions of it all the way through, I'd have like a really nice set of images that kind of show all the iterative process that, unless you take photographs of your work, you kind of lose when you're doing a drawing. So it's quite nice. Okay.
Marian, can we see these side by side?
Which ones? The prints?
The two that you just did, yeah.
Okay, so that's the two.
Ooh.
So quite ghostly.
So cool.
Yeah.
So different.
Yeah. And again, you know, you would develop these, work into them. Yeah, further. Have we got more questions?
Let's see. Yes, Harmony is asking what kinds of media can be used on top of the prints with oil-based ink,
Yeah.
if you wanted to do mixed media.
Well, watercolor can work quite well. So with the watercolor, it falls into the bits that's not oily. So you can colorize them really nicely with watercolors, and that can be a really lovely technique to use. And you could also use, you know, some of the ink that you've used to do the print. You could get a little paintbrush and paint in bits with the ink as well. Yeah, and actually once they're dry, you can work other medium into them. So maybe oil pastel, you could work on top of it with that, or even soft pastel. So, you know, when it comes to art materials and media and experimentation, I think if you can think it, try it, and see if it works. If it doesn't work, well, that's fine. You've got more information. But if it does work, you've then discovered something that's really quite wonderful. So yeah, I would say that the key thing about printmaking is you're going to be making multiples. They're not as precious in a way as drawings. So you can be a little bit more risk-taking with them and see what kind of interesting results you can get from a bit of experimentation.
That is interesting. Okay, some more questions.
Okay.
Catherine is asking, do you have to let the ink dry first before going over with watercolor? Does that matter?
I bet you could do it without it being dry. I think probably it would be dry, because at this point, normally what I would do would be a cleanup. So by the time I would clean it all up and wash my hands and put all the stuff away, by the time I would go on to do the watercolor, it probably would be quite dry. With the oil-based ones, they take, I don't know, a day or so to dry. You can use acrylic-based inks as well. They're not as nice. They don't go on as richly or as deeply, but those dry pretty much instantly. There's a few other little printing techniques out there that are really interesting. There's one called jelly prints, which is a kind of like a really wobbly, thick surface. It's like almost like gelatin that it's made of. And you can do some really lovely things with that too. So yeah, there's a lot of really nice experimentation.
Interesting. Marquise is asking, are prints always done pre-planned, or are you able to do them on the fly?
You're able to do them on the fly, as you saw there. So, I mean, obviously I've got my little picture there, but that's not that much planning that goes into a monoprint. So certainly with a monoprint, you could just ink up your piece of perspex or your piece of glass, get your cloth, draw through it. You could draw it, you could do a figure from imagination, you could be, you know, drawing from a reference or drawing from your sketchbook, but it didn't take that much planning. So, and I think as well, like, you know, with the kind of little still life print, I mean, that's really using something that's literally a lot of you would just throw away. You know, you do these thumbnails for the course and think, oh, well, that's that done. But if you actually look through some of the work that you've done for the various courses here, you could probably find lots of little bits of images that could make interesting prints. So it's always worth keeping these things so you can have a look through and see, especially if you're having a moment where you're thinking, oh, I don't know what to do. Look through your old work and see if there's another direction that you can take it in.
Okay. And let's see, Clumsy Penguin is asking, if you want to modify some parts of the design, do you have to start all over to get the original textures and gradients in the next print?
Yeah. Yeah, with Monoprint, you might struggle to kind of keep it going. So this is the thing about Monoprint. You might not take you know, so with the etching, you want to take as many pulls as you want to get it right. But with Monoprint, you probably want to spend longer with the Monoprint before you actually say, I'm going to print it now. So yeah, it's going to be harder with them. They're much more unique. They're more like one-offs. But as I say, some people think, well, why would you bother doing it? But it gives you such a nice, the textures and the kind of etherealness of the pictures is so lovely that I think they're really interesting to do. And you can get those sort of second ghostly ones as well. So yeah, I think you would have to just start again really with the Monoprint.
Wow, that's great. Your knowledge and experience there is very much appreciated, Marian.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody, for all your amazing questions and, you know, enthusiasm as well. It's like one of the great joys in my life to have done printmaking. And, you know, it was always such a fun department to be in when you're there seeing all these amazing prints. You know, it's that moment of magic when you peel it off and you're like, oh, that's quite exciting. So I hope that some of you have been inspired to give printmaking a go, and you can see that you could certainly do Lino very easily and the monoprints very easily without very much equipment. Etching, I'll let you know how I get on with the pasta maker. Okay, if it works, I'll report back. Okay.
Yes, we have to know. All right, thank you so much, okay. Marian. That was amazing. And before we sign off, guys, please, I would just like to plug, join our digital campus. We have so many activities going on all the time. Join the community, see your fellow students, and be able to share your work. It's so cool. So please go ahead, click the link.
Yeah, Peter, I'm forgetting. We're back again tonight, aren't we?
We are. Would you like to say something about that?
Yeah, so Peter and I are going to be hosting the prom, where we're going to be looking at all the amazing designs done by new master's students.
So excited for this.
And I've been looking forward to this one, you know, it's so much because, you know, Peter is a fashion expert, so we're going to have so much chat about all things fashion.
Of course.
And yeah, we're going to have great fun at prom. So join us on the digital campus for prom.
Yes, and we're going to be looking at it live, guys. So
yeah, and I might have to wash up my act a little bit before prom.
Yeah, I'm going to put on the suit and tie, guys, so if you want to see that.
You'll come back and we'll be all glamorous.
Exactly.
See you later.
Okay, see you soon, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.